you have personal knowledge of any patient complaints that you brought to Ms. Hubbard's about Dr. Schwartz delivering substandard care?
Not substandard care, no. Patients don't know if they're receiving substandard care.
When your September 2014 meeting with Ms. Hubbard's concluded, did you feel any threat of intimidation or retaliation from Ildiko?
No, naively, I thought HR's function was than I learned it was.
As a member of the medical staff, you had training on the peer review process, right?
No, I did not have any training from medical staff on the peer review process.
Okay, well, at this point in September 2014, did you know that the medical staff office was responsible for addressing clinical concerns?
I did, because I had expressed concern previously about a different practitioner in a different discipline a couple years earlier.
Okay. Did you bring any of these concerns you brought to Ildiko Hubbard's to Karen Kulchin or anybody else in the medical staff office at the time?
In 2014?
Yes.
No.
You received a disciplinary written warning in early October 2014 related to an email you sent to Dr. Schwartz, correct?
That's correct.
Judge, I'd like to introduce respondent exhibit number 3, please. And I think this is an exhibit that the complainant introduced as well. You are familiar with this email, Dr. Schwartz? Or Dr.
Intimately.
McMurray?
Yes.
This is the email that prompted your disciplinary written warning, correct?
That is correct.
You're expressing concerns to Dr. Schwartz about proposed adjustments to your clinical and call hours in this email, correct?
That's correct.
You do not contend that Dr. Schwartz's proposed adjustments to your clinical and call hours at the time violated any clinical standard of care, correct?
It didn't violate any clinical standards of care, no.
By extension, you do not believe that any of these proposed adjustments pose any sort of threat to patient safety or health?
No, I did not.
Later in this email, paragraph 5, Judge, I think it's the last full paragraph at the bottom of this exhibit. You raise the issue of Dr. Schwartz not having his board certification and that obtaining his board certification is in the best interest of the clinic. Is that accurate?
Yes.
What does Dr. Schwartz's board certification have to do with your clinical and call hours?
Doesn't have anything to do with my clinical and call hours.
Do you contend that Dr. Schwartz not being board certified in October 2014 by itself violated any sort of standard of care under the APA Code of Conduct?
It did not.
Okay. Judge, I'd like to move, I forgot to move respondent exhibit number 2 and 3.
Sure. Do you have any objections, Attorney Plantinga, to either one?
No objections.
All right. So respondents exhibit 2 and respondents exhibit 3 are received.
I think those are the only 2 exhibits they've introduced. All right, Judge, I'd like to introduce respondent exhibit number 5.
Okay. I don't think I can flip this around, so it might be kind of difficult to read.
Maybe try Control Shift plus, or you might be able to right click and rotate it clockwise until, yeah, oh, there we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Sure. This is the written warning you received after sending that October 1st email to Dr. Schwartz, correct?
That's correct.
Julie Jackson and Sue Oliver were present at the meeting when they presented this written warning to you, correct?
Yes.
And Sue Oliver is another human resources professional, right?
Yes.
She's not a licensed psychologist.
That's correct.
To your knowledge, she has no training in psychology.
That is correct.
Sue Oliver did not supervise Dr. Schwartz or oversee his clinical work, correct?
That's correct.
And shortly before this meeting with Julie and Sue, ProHealth Care terminated Dr. Mosnick, correct?
Did you say Julie and Sue Oliver? I don't think.
No,
I
ProHealth
think.
Care.
Right.
Yeah. Do you know who precisely terminated Dr. Mosnick?
I believe it was Julie Jackson and Ildigo. But I'm not 100% certain of that.
And Dr. Schwartz assisted Julie Jackson in her investigation of Dr. Mosnick, leading to her termination, right?
Oh, yes.
That is, in fact, one of the reasons why Dr. Schwartz replaced you. Julie Jackson wanted more leadership from her clinical director in investigating Dr. Mosnick, right?
I'm going to object. That calls for speculation.
Do you know the answer? Dr.
Well,
McMurray, do you know the
believe-
answer?
I believe she said in her deposition that part of the reason she replaced me is because I wouldn't address her concerns about Dr. Mosnick. And which is true, and partly because it wasn't within the scope of my administrative tasks. It was a medical staff issue that never went to the medical staff office. There isn't anything in the director's list of duties that includes implementing performance reviews for other professionals in the performance improvement programs within the section. He was not qualified to be doing that kind of a peer evaluation. And it wasn't the way it should have been done. It should have been done if there were concerns about her documentation or about patient care issues. My understanding is that should go to the medical staff office and be evaluated for appropriate peer review.
Okay. Do you contend that Dr. Schwartz is alleged at being qualified for that role, that investigatory role, somehow put patient health or safety at risk?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I just want to read this performance documentation into the record. On a 10/1/14, an email titled "My Clinical Schedule and Hours" was sent by Dr. McMurray to Dr. Evan Schwartz. Neuropsychology colleague Gina Riekemper, Director Julie Jackson, and HR business partner Sue Oliver were also copied on the email. The email was sent 2 days following the end of employment for a mutual colleague that Dr. McMurray has regarded as a personal friend. While ProHealth is committed to appropriately addressing legitimate employee questions and concerns, the content and tone of the email, which in part challenged Dr. Schwartz's clinical expertise and had no bearing on Dr. McMurray's schedule or hours, is regarded by ProHealth leadership to be an attempt to bully and belittle Dr. Schwartz. Did I read those two paragraphs correctly?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you understand how others, including Julie Jackson, Sue Oliver, interpreted your October 1st email to Dr. Schwartz as containing bullying and belittling language?
Object calls for speculation.
You can answer the
No,
question.
it's her own interpretation.
You can answer. Go ahead.
Yes, I guess to some degree, particularly at the end. I don't think that anything in the first two paragraphs was bullying or belittling.
The first two paragraphs of the email. But as to the rest of the email, you agree that it's reasonably construed by those people as bullying and belittling?
Yes.
My exhibits are all upside down now because I was counterclockwise. The result on this performance of documentation, respondent exhibit 5, is an X next to future incidents of failure to follow policy or failure to meet performance expectations will result in termination of employment. Did you understand that as being the consequence of future bullying or belittling behavior?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'd like
Not
to move responding exhibit number 5 into the record, please.
Any objections, Attorney Plantinga?
No objection.
All right, exhibit R5 is received into the record then.
As of this October 2014 meeting, no patient of Dr. Schwartz had told you directly or firsthand that they felt they were receiving substandard care or that he was somehow threatening their safety, correct?
I'm not aware of the content of the patient complaints or the motivation for their complaints. I don't know anything about.
So you can't speak to whether those patient complaints are even about a clinical concern. It could just be that those patients didn't care for Dr. Schwartz.
Could be, yes.
At this October 2014 meeting, do you contend Sue Oliver showed you any retaliatory animus?
Not retaliatory animus, but she did question what I thought how I was qualified to evaluate his clinical care. And she also indicated that she felt that potentially his training was different than mine, and so he would present cases differently. And she thought it was, she had a lot of questions regarding how that were along the lines of, so what gives you the right to raise these questions? And I explained to her that according to my experience and my training, that is the ethics and my professional guidelines are that you address concerns about practicing beyond the scope of one's capabilities, first with the individual, and then if that doesn't solve the problem, then to report it. And that goes for other cases. Bring it to the individual first and have a discussion with them. But at that point, I was no longer in a position to be able to do that without being fearful for my job, because Eben could send an email to Julie saying, Pam was in my office and discussing a case that I did, and she was bullying me about it. I was no longer in a position where I could offer any criticism or any kind of consultative or collegial comments on his casework without being fearful for my job. So that's what I did. I tried to no longer give input about cases that he presented.
You testified that Ms. Hubbard's at the conclusion of your September 2014 meeting said that HR would look into your complaints, correct?
She said that there would be an investigation and she would circle back with us.
Do you know for a certainty that no investigation occurred? Or do you have any
I
reason
know
to
for
believe that
certain
no
there was no circling back. If there was an investigation, it took less than a week to conduct.
Judge, I'd like to introduce respondent exhibit number 6, please. I moved 5 into the record, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, doctor, I think this is another email that your attorney presented you, email thread. And it seems to follow your disciplinary meeting with Julie Jackson, Sue Oliver. Is that correct?
Mm.
Seems to be sent on October 4th, 2014. Top.
This was from 2013, that one. And I'm not sure about the timing of this is from Saturday, October 4th. So
It looks like on October 4th, 2014 at 11:02 a.m. You forwarded a copy of this August 1st, 2013 email to Julie Jackson. Can we agree on that?
yeah, I'm just, my confusion is like the timing of that based on, okay, yes. So yes, it was after the meeting with myself and Sue Oliver.
We already reviewed this August 1st, 2013 email with your attorney. You agree that there's nothing in this 2013 email related to Dr. Schwartz delivering substandard clinical care, correct?
Correct.
By extension, there's nothing in here about imposing a threat to patient safety, correct?
Correct.
Your primary concern in writing this email, this August 1st, 2013 email, seems to be that it was Dr. Schwartz's ability to function in the role of clinical leader with no prior administrative experience.
Correct.
Diagnostic and clinical skills are different from administrative skills, right?
They are.
You don't believe that this August 1st, 2013 email caused or contributed to your termination in November 2017, correct?
I don't know I don't know.
Judge, if we could go back to page or exhibit 54, page 175, please.
Okay.
Page 175 of your deposition transcript, line 4, question. Do you have any reason to believe that this email, this August 1st, 2013 email caused or contributed to your termination in November 2017? Answer, no. First, did I read that correctly?
Yes?
Second, do you have any reason to change your answer from your deposition?
No.
Judge, I'll move include responding exhibit 6 to the record, please.
Any objections, Attorney Plantinga, to Respondents Exhibit 6?
No.
All right, so then I'll receive R6 into the record.
Judge, if you could please pull up responding exhibit number 11. And if you could scroll down to the bottom of page 91. Dr. McMurray, you mentioned that you raised a concern about the way Dr. Schwartz filled out guardianship paperwork during your disciplinary meeting in October 2014, correct?
Yes.
So here at the bottom, we see Julie Jackson emailing you and copying Sue Oliver and Ildiko Hubbard's, both of HR. An
Yes.
email dated October 6th, 2014. And she's asking for more information from you on the subject of this guardianship paperwork. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes.
It's fair to say that Julie actually was looking for information, took an interest in the concern that you brought to her attention.
Yes.
Judge, if you could scroll down to page 92, it's still exhibit 11. A little further. We can stop there. This is in the middle of the screen. We see Julie Jackson emailing you October 15th at 2014 at 2:06 p.m. Also copying again Ildiko and Sue Oliver. And I'll just read it into the record. Pam, I had Gina review the patient information and signed document as an impartial evaluator. Gina stated, quote, was signing the paperwork ideal? No, but reasonable, yes, end quote. Gina stated there was risk either way, but more importantly, there was more risk if you did not sign the paperwork due to this patient's condition. Thank you, Julie. Did I read that email correctly?
Yes.
You consider, first of all, do you understand Julie to be referring to Dr. Ray Kemper?
Yes.
Okay. You consider Dr. Ray Kemper a trusted colleague, correct?
I do.
And according to Julie, Dr. Ray Kemper found Dr. Schwartz's actions in filling out the guardianship paperwork reasonable, right?
In a qualified fashion, yes.
You don't have any reason to dispute your trusted colleague's assessment of this paperwork or how Dr. McMurray or how Dr. Schwartz handled it, right?
My only issue is with the term impartial evaluator.
Why?
Dr. Ray Kemper was in a position where she was being asked by Julie Jackson to side with me or against Evan. And in a situation like that with the power differential, Dr. Ray Kemper is not going to rock the boat. She was concerned about being terminated herself. I had said as much to both Sue Oliver and to Julie Jackson. And so I see that she reviewed it for Julie Jackson and she gave her qualified response. I don't have any reason to question my trusted colleague's judgment. So I would agree. It was not ideal.
Do you agree with Dr. Ray Kemper's assessment that it was reasonable?
I don't know. I'm not sure I do, but that's neither here nor there.
So this is fairly characterized as two competent neuropsychologist, you and Dr. Akemper arriving at opposite conclusions about the same issue? Or different conclusions at minimum?
Yes.
Julie Jackson recommended that if you had a clinical concern about this guardianship paperwork, that you should submit that concern to the medical staff office for peer review. Did she?
She did.
How do you explain Julie's willingness to refer your standard of care issue, your alleged standard of care issue, to the medical staff office for peer review, as suggesting that Julie Jackson had any sort of retaliatory animus against you?
Because the statement was made in front of Ildigo or in front of Sue. There was someone from HR present at the time. And so she had to follow through. It was part of the action list that Sue Oliver left the office with on the date of our meeting. So she is addressing it.
Okay. So Julie, you acknowledge, addressed your concern and dealt with it. Fair statement?
Yes.
A question of paperwork is not strictly an issue of competency on Dr. Schwartz's part, right? Or his clinical skill?
This paperwork or paperwork in general? When you
This
say paperwork, you mean documentation, correct?
This paperwork regarding the guardianship, the patient incompetence issue.
The only issue with this paperwork was that it was not completed the way I had seen it completed by myself and others in the service in my tenure at ProHealth Care.
But you would agree, though, that doesn't amount to a competency issue or
I would agree.
Substandard care on Dr. Schwartz's part.
I would agree with that.
Going back up to page 91, we're still on exhibit 11. This would be your reply email to Julie and Ildiko, dated October 8th, 2014, 2:54 p.m. Subject regarding patient incompetence. When your attorney was going through this document with you earlier, you mentioned this last little paragraph here. You testified about some hearsay complaints, patient complaints that you heard, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. It's fair to say that you don't know the exact nature of these patient complaints?
Well, other than that they didn't want to be seen by Dr. Schwartz, no.
But you don't know the reason why they didn't want to be seen?
I do not know the reason why.
It could be for a reason that has absolutely nothing to do with his provision of care, correct?
I assume conceivably could be.
Maybe
Yes.
they didn't like his personality, or
Maybe.
could be, okay. So by extension, you wouldn't know if these complaints actually involved any potential risk of, to patient safety or health.
That's correct.
You mentioned that, having a good rapport with patients is important for a doctor because you want your patients to be cooperative, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that having a cooperative patient is most likely to lead to the best results in terms of testing and diagnosis.
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that these patients weren't just uncooperative to begin with?
Maybe one of them was, but this was not a one-time deal. This had happened on at least 3 occasions with those 2 providers, Diane, Dr. Mosnick, and Dr. Gina Ray Kemper. And it happened twice subsequently with a new provider after she was hired in 2017. So whether it was patient safety or a personality issue, it was the only time that ever happened in my experience in the clinic. I had never been asked to be replaced by someone, nor had anyone else in the clinic that I had been colleagues with.
Okay. But as you testified just a few moments ago, you don't know the nature of those complaints.
You're right. I don't know the nature of the complaints.
Okay. Judge, I'd like to move Respondent Exhibit 11 into the record, please.
Any objections, Attorney Plantinga?
That's the one that's up, right?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Yep, that's this exhibit.
It's the one that has the fuller email thread to it.
No objection.
All right, so then exhibit R11 is received.
Thank you. You asked the medical staff office to complete a peer review of Dr. Schwartz in September 2015, correct?
Yes.
Judge, if you could introduce Respondent Exhibit number 8. Again, I think this is another duplicate of an email, a document that your attorney already showed you during direct. But this is the letter you submitted to the medical staff office requesting that peer review of Dr. Schwartz, right?
That is correct.
And it's addressed to Doctors Karen Colchin and John Zant.
Yes.
Earlier, you testified that the basis of this concern was a consultation note you read performed or written by Dr. Schwartz that took place approximately 6 months before you read that note. Do you recall
Yes.
that testimony? I'm going to read about midway through the first paragraph, starting with in performing. So, quote, in performing a review of the patient's chart, I discovered that a prior neuropsychological consultation had been completed on 2/7/2014 by Evan Schwartz, PhD. End quote. Do you want to correct your testimony about when Dr. Schwartz conducted that consultation?
I am uncertain of whether that is a typo or I'm incorrect in saying that it was 6 months previous. I believe it's a typo, but I cannot be 100% certain. I don't have the paperwork, so.
Okay. So there's a discrepancy, it looks like. But at any rate, this patient was not being seen by Dr. Schwartz in July 2015, correct?
Right.
You were seeing this patient in July 2015, correct?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that as of July 2015, regardless of whether it took place the consult with Dr. Schwartz took place 6 months before or a year and a half before, when you reviewed the file and provided the consult to this patient, Dr. Schwartz was not in a position to harm the patient anymore, allegedly, because he was not administering any care to the patient.
Okay.
Correct?
Is that a question?
Yes, correct.
I don't know whether or not this caused about whether or not the issue caused any harm or not. I have no way of knowing that.
Okay. My question being, though, if Dr. Schwartz is no longer seeing the patient, there's no potential risk of Dr. Schwartz delivering any substandard care that could potentially.
Not to this specific patient. Correct.
Okay. The hospitalist overseeing this patient's care asked you to perform the consult, correct?
Yes,
This referring physician never raised any concern about Dr. Schwartz's earlier consult with the patient who is the subject of this peer review, correct?
correct.
This referring hospitalist never expressed concern about the standard of care Dr. Schwartz delivered to this particular patient, correct?
This hospitalist is an MD and is not an expert in neuropsychology, but there would be. He asked me to see the patient even though the patient had already been seen in neuropsychology.
Okay, all the same though, he never expressed a concern about Dr. Schwartz
did not.
seeing him, the patient.
No.
Julie Jackson is the one who recommended or minimum endorsed that you submit a peer review request, right?
That is correct.
So similar to the guardianship issue, how do you explain Julie's willingness to refer your standard of care concern to the medical staff office for peer review as evincing any sort of retaliatory animus against you?
Again, so when I brought this to her attention, she first asked me if I would consider mentoring him to overcome these issues that I point out with regards to this specific note. And then she suggested that I do the peer review. And I explained to her that that's not how it works. I can't do the peer review. I'm not in a position to do that. And so then she said, well, then you would send it to Dr. Kulchin. And I said, yes, that's what I would do. So she asked me to write up the case with specifics, requesting a peer, I'm not sure she understood what she was asking me to do, but she asked me to write up the case and my concerns, and that's what I did.
Okay. And Julie Jackson's not a member of the medical staff office, right?
Mm-mm. She is not.
But she listened to your concern and nonetheless encouraged you to bring the concern to the appropriate body. Ultimately, that's what occurred, right?
Yes.
Putting aside any confusion she may have had about the process or how the peer review process ran, she directed you to the medical staff office, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that Dr. Schwartz's initial consult, caused any actual harm to this patient?
I don't know the answer to that. One of my concerns, and I expressed this to Julie Jackson, was this is one of hundreds of reports and evaluations that he had performed. I only see, as a result of my work, I don't routinely see his reports. I'm not in an evaluative situation. So I don't know, but based on this report, I had concerns about the possibility that there were instances in which there could be potential harm to patients if there's an inaccurate diagnosis or that it's not meeting the standard of care of our service. The level of expertise is not demonstrated on this report, and this is only one report from hundreds.
Hundreds that you personally reviewed?
No, my point being, I don't review his work as a matter of course. He is independent, he's licensed, he's doing work. But I don't have the opportunity nor the desire to review his work and critique it. So when something like this comes to my attention, though, it raised concerns for me about, okay, what about the ones I'm not seeing and no one is reviewing? That was a reason that was something I brought up, was that this is a sample out of many. And if this is a sample, it's concerning to me.
So from one consult you reviewed, you extrapolated a concern about hundreds.
That's not what I'm saying. And this was not the first concern I had had. I had heard him present cases, many cases, And I had experienced his case conceptualization, and we had reviewed cases every week as a group repeatedly since he'd come on board. So I had plenty of exposure to see him practice and to have him demonstrate his expertise. I'm not saying that the hundreds that he did were incorrect. I'm saying that this is an example of one that I found that was very concerning. This is not probably the first right hemisphere patient that he has seen. So I had concerns based on this, that there may be discrepancies or problems with other reports. But it's not up to me to review his reports.
Understood, doctor. Thank you. After Julie Jackson referred you to the medical staff office, was it your understanding that the investigation into your peer review request was confidential to those in the medical staff office?
Confidential to those in the medical staff, yes. Yes.
By extension, the result of that investigation would also be held confidential, correct?
Yes, and Dr. Kulchin called me and we had a conversation about that, yes. I had no expectation that I would hear anything about the outcome.
Okay. Do you believe Dr. Kulchin to be an honest and truthful person?
I do.
You have no reason to believe the medical staff office, under the direction of Dr. Kulchin, failed to handle your September 2015 peer review request appropriately, correct?
I assume that they handled it appropriately.
Aside from the 2015 peer review request, this Exhibit 8, you never submitted any other peer review requests to the medical staff office concerning Dr. Schwartz, correct?
I did not.
I just want to focus on the last page of this letter briefly. Last full paragraph. Oh, I guess the second to last full paragraph. Scroll up a little bit if you can, Judge. Thank you. In the middle of this paragraph, do you see where you begin a sentence, finally, comma?
Yes.
Okay, so the letter states, finally, in the past during my tenure as the lead clinician of neuropsychology, of the neuropsychology section, I was made aware of complaints of patients and or family members who perceived Dr. Schwartz to be hurried, haughty, arrogant, and appeared to lack empathy during their encounters with him. First, did I read that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
Complaints about Dr. Schwartz's personal style have nothing to do with this consult that is the subject of your peer review request, right?
No, it does not.
By extension, those complaints, alleged complaints about his personal style do not bear on his competency as a clinician or whether or not he posed a danger to patient safety.
Well, so according to the med staff code of conduct, I believe there is stipulation that problematic patient interactions that result in patient complaints are considered purview of the med staff and the executive committee.
Do you know the specific nature of these complaints that you referenced here, where you call it haughty, arrogant, appear to lack empathy?
Well, they're in quotations because they were taken from written complaints from patients that were submitted as in conjunction with the satisfaction surveys through the Senior Health Center, one of the specialty clinics. Those are quotes because that's what was written. So the specific nature of the concern, I think, is clear.
I'd like to move responding to Exhibit 8 into the record, please, Judge.
Any objections, Attorney Plantinga? All right, Exhibit R8 is received.
So the last time you raised a complaint to Julie Jackson about Dr. Schwartz's alleged substandard patient care would be at your review in fall 2016, correct?
The last time I did it in writing, I could say that is correct. I'm not certain about having talked with her about something or another. I don't know the answer to that.
So at least, after your peer review in fall 2016, you don't remember having any conversations with Julie Jackson about Evan Schwartz's clinical competency.
Not outside of this case, no.
So you discussed this case with Julie at your review.
Yes.
True?
Yes. Well, and after I finished it, which was a month later, and then I asked her something about it shortly after that.
And again, you do not know the result of the medical staff office's investigation, right?
Correct.
And you have no reason to believe that they didn't handle it appropriately.
I have no reason to believe that they didn't handle it appropriately.
At this fall 2016 review, you did not raise any new concerns to Julie Jackson about Dr. Schwartz delivering any substandard patient care. That was a new concern rather than just something that you had expressed in the past.
Well, I did express concern about his failure to achieve board certification again.
And we established that under the APA Code of Conduct, not having a board certification is not a violation of the standard of care, correct?
Right. It was only the standard of our clinic.
Okay. By extension, in this years 2016, 2017, aside from what you repeated to Julie Jackson, you didn't raise any new concerns about Dr. Schwartz's clinical competency or him delivering care that posed a threat to any of his patient population. You didn't raise any new concerns to anybody in the supervisory capacity over him, correct?
That's correct.
And you didn't, same question for human resources. You didn't raise any of those any new concerns to human resources.
I don't think I had any interaction with anyone in human resources in 2016 or 2017 until I was terminated.
I'd like to refer back to responding to Exhibit 10, which I believe we already introduced into the record during opposing counsel's direct examination.
Yes.
I'd like to look at the fiscal year 16 eval that's on page 51. Starts. So, all right. So, Dr. McMurray, this fiscal year 16 performance evaluation covered the time period September 1st, 2015 to September 30th, 2016, correct?
I don't see the dates on there, so yes.
Well, actually, it's my mistake. It's the review period.
10/1/2016.
Yeah, October 1st, 2015 to 9/30/2016, correct?
Yes. It's overdue.
You sent your request for review to the medical staff office on September 18th, 2015, correct?
Yes.
Julie Jackson was aware.
I'm not certain that it was sent in September. I think it may have been sent in early October. It took me a while to compose the letter.
Understood. So, but it's fair to say that Julie Jackson was aware of your peer review request at the time that she authored this fiscal year 16 performance eval, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We've gone through this fiscal year 16 performance eval in some detail. You would agree that the majority of things Ms. Jackson writes about you in this performance evaluation are positive, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Julie Jackson writing majority positive things about you. That's not consistent with somebody seeking to retaliate against you, is it?
Well, with the exception of the fact that she mentioned she believes there's still tension, but she offers no basis of evidence for that. There's in the paragraph toward the end, it says, I believe there's still tension between she and Evan. But she has said at a different time that she had not observed any problematic interactions. So I'm not.
So that's a fair statement that.
It's mostly positive is a fair statement.
And that she's saying mostly positive things about you is inconsistent with somebody who has retaliatory animus against you.
I don't know that that's the case. I'm a very competent professional and I'm respected in the hospital. I'm well known. I'm not sure how she would say negative things about me and be truthful in the evaluation.
Okay. Judge, if you could look at Exhibit 54, the deposition transcript.
What page?
Pages 222 and 223.
Okay, here's
We'll start on
222.
Starting on line 21, question, it's fair to say, looking over your fiscal year 16 evaluation, that the majority of what Julie writes about you is positive. Answer, yes. Question, do you think Julie Jackson saying the majority of positive things about you is consistent with somebody seeking to retaliate against you? Answer, no. Is what you said at your deposition still your testimony today?
Yes.
First of all, did I read that correctly?
Yeah, yes, I think that's the way I answered.
And is that still your testimony today?
That I think that in general, it's not consistent with somebody seeking to retaliate against me. Yes, I would agree that that is not consistent with that.
Okay. Fiscal year 15 starts on page 43, Judge. I'd like to go to that if we can. Again, I believe we covered this in some detail with your attorney, Dr. McMurray. This is an evaluation period between October 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2015, correct?
Correct.
And Julie Jackson performed this evaluation?
Correct.
And it was during this time period that Julie Jackson, HR, issued you your disciplinary warning related to that email you sent to Dr. Schwartz, correct?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Sam?
Sure. It was during this time period that Julie Jackson and Sue Oliver and HR issued you that performance documentation, that disciplinary warning related to that email you sent to Dr. Schwartz, right?
Yes.
So that meeting and email took place in this evaluation period.
The review period is from October 10th. I don't know what the date of the review was in 2014. I believe that the review from 2014 was completed prior to that meeting, but 2015 is subsequent to that. Yes.
Well, it looks like the review period is 10/1/2014 and 9/30/2015.
Yes,
In the email that you sent to Dr. Schwartz that led to your disciplinary meeting with Sue Oliver and Julie Jackson, that email is dated 10/1/2014.
yes.
Okay. And again, the majority of things that Ms. Jackson writes about you in this performance evaluation are positive, correct?
Correct.
And again, like your fiscal year 16 performance evaluation, Julie Jackson writing majority positive things about you is not consistent with somebody who is seeking to retaliate against you, right? We can agree to that?
It's not consistent with language that would suggest that she intended to retaliate against me. Yes, that is correct.
Do you know Neva Schwartz?
Yes,
Neva Schwartz, the medical coder, ProHealth Care, with whom you work from time to time, correct?
yes,
And you consider Neva Schwartz to be an honest person, correct?
I'm going to object calls for character evidence and no basis for offering an opinion.
Do you have an opinion of her honesty?
I mean, I have no reason to doubt her honesty.
Okay.
I don't know her that well, so I've only interacted with her mostly virtually, but no, I have no reason to doubt her honesty.
Okay.
For the record, I'll strike that. So you don't have any reason to believe that Neva Schwartz would lie about anything she reported to Julie Jackson or HR?
No,
We spoke about Jessica Zurcher earlier, right? She took over Julie Jackson's role as director
yes,
of your section.
yes,
And that occurred in approximately April, May 2017, right?
yes,
And you consider Jessica Zurcher to be an honest person, right?
generally, yes,
So again, you don't have any reason to believe Jessica Zurcher would lie to HR about any of her observations of your behavior.
I disagree with Jennifer Zurcher's characterization of my behavior in the August 7th meeting. But other than that, I would say I don't have any reason to. I mean, she perceived what she perceived and she reported what she reported, but I disagree on her characterization of it.
Okay, I understand that. You currently own your own practice, right? Neuropsychological practice. And that's an S Corp called Neuropsychological Services of Southeastern Wisconsin Ltd.
Correct.
You've owned this S Corp since February 2018, correct?
It was, yes,
ProHealth terminated you on November 2nd, 2017, right?
yes,
You applied for 2 private practice positions with other providers after your termination, correct?
not private practice. No, with healthcare systems.
Okay, pardon me.
That's what-
You applied for 2 positions with healthcare systems after your termination, right?
No, I applied at one and I inquired about applying at another.
Thank you. The one that you applied for was the position with the Milwaukee VA hospital, right?
Correct.
And that was in approximately November 2017.
Yeah, yes, the close date on the job posting was the 10th of November.
And you did not receive a job offer from the VA, correct?
That is correct.
But in November 2015, you had turned down a job offer from the VA, correct?
Correct. I'm not sure if it was November, but it was around that time. It was recently, which is, I assume, why they didn't hire me. Are we frozen up?
I was just gonna say
No,
that I
no,
think.
no.
Oh, okay.
Is that a frozen face? Okay, so you inquired about a job position with Aurora St. Luke's after your termination, right?
Correct.
And that was in the February 2018 time period,
Yes.
and you did not receive a job offer from Aurora St. Luke's.
I didn't put an application in after not hearing back from the physician recruiter. Plus, it was the way Joe presented it in the email. I took that to mean that they were looking to hire less expensive neuropsychologists.
Do you surmise that the reason why you most likely did not hear back from Aurora is that you previously declined their offer of employment in October
Yes.
2015?
Yes. And they knew the reason I declined it partly was because I didn't want to do the commute. So there was nothing different at this point in time. There would still be the commute.
Do you form the same impression or surmise the same with respect to the VA hospital position?
I assumed that the reason they did not call me back was because we had gone all the way through the hiring process, the vetting process, and I received an offer and then turned it down and then declined it. I did perceive that as the reason why the same people would be evaluating the application that did the first time. So yes.
Okay.